Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 224 of this conflict in Ukraine. A diary done in the form of conversation between Olexiy Arestovich, Lieutenant Colonel, advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition journalist. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. We're doing a usual stream. It is Wednesday, October 5th. Time is 10 p.m. in Kiev, and it is day 224 with Olexiy Arestovich. Glad to see you, Olexiy. Good evening. Good evening, Mark. I wanted to introduce you as an invited professor of Kiev Mogilevsky Academy and decided that I'm not going to do that. That's all right. That's all right. Everything was stolen before us. We have nothing to lose except our chains. We have over 100,000 watching us, near 20,000 click the like button. I have a usual ask to our viewers, please share a link to this stream in your social media. Everywhere you can, make sure the ones who need to see it do get a chance. Subscribe to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. We both are not in our usual living arrangements. We are traveling, things happen. We'll discuss the fresh news, and you don't forget to click the like button and subscribe. Okay, let's run over the map. We didn't have it yesterday. We did not have a stream yesterday. Alright, just remember that I don't have map capability today, so I'll be just pulling it from my memory. Okay, we're showing Liman, Bilogorovka, and that area. Okay, on the front, last 24 hours was roughly quiet. Why? Because offensive effort, counteroffensive effort for Ukraine troops is at a pause. We took little time to restock, get a bit more reserves to the line where we are. At the same time, the enemy is using that little breather to fortify the locations where they retreated to, and is trying to use that time to restock their ammo, people, which will be rather difficult for them because their logistics is broken and the breather will be very short. Let's say within a few hours the holiday will restart again. If you watch Russian forums, they're telling that the road to Kremenaya has already been cut by Ukrainian forces. We cannot confirm that, so we don't know where that happened, but they are saying that orange line following the red line on the upper part of the map has been cut by Ukrainian troops. And they do expect Svatova to fall. I would remind you that a couple days ago, in our Monday and Saturday streams, we did talk that there'll be some time before we get to Svatova. It's not so simple. But right now they are already discussing Svatova, which was understandable because they did not have a second line of defense behind Liman, and the jump happened rather quickly. And we are monitoring the Russians who are watching the conflict and writing about that, because it's also not official. That's their internal discussions, because if you follow official statements of Russian military, they have destroyed our army 7 times and 10 times destroyed our equipment. Finally, their propaganda is starting to grill their military and starting to question why do military keep giving the same stale news. And they do call names, and they do bring up that Russian army speaker Konashenkov and his statements. So I think now Konashenkov will understand what is to be Arestovich, because he was talking and only praised for the last 7 months. Now he's getting some fire. That's good. Okay, let's go down south from Bakhmut to Mariinka, about the same. Limited attempts to push, periodic aviation and artillery. Same in Zaporozhye, not much changes. In Kherson, we did cut off the top of the occupation head they had on the right bank of Dnieper, and we cut this off and we took Davidov Brod, which cost quite a bit of effort and blood on our side, where Russians did dig using concrete fortifications and stuff near Davidov Brod. You can see that in the center of the map where the blue and the green areas collide. So now they are roughly thrown away from Davidov Brod to Duchane, and there are two big news there. They abandoned the river side. That was sort of defense, at least some natural barrier. They decided not to hold it. They just fell further. So now we do have that. Same thing on the east. Near Oskol, we got a place on the other side, on the other bank of the river, as a good base for regrouping and the further push, which is really bad news for Russian troops there. So they tried to build the second line of defense, use some irrigation channels, some local capabilities allowed them to fortify a little, but this is not for long. The joy of life will continue to happen with them. Because I think the right word is they are starting to roll. What's the problem with Kherson now? Their group is becoming more compact. Their position there is becoming smaller. The problem it poses is that it is being shelled now with smaller field artillery, not the big 150 or HIMARS that reach from 30, 40 miles away, but smaller field artillery that can reach them from 15, from 20 kilometers. And HIMARS didn't disappear, so the effectiveness of our artillery fire, as long as their locations will be shrinking, the effectiveness of our fire will become much higher. And it's easier to target. They used to be the same group of people on a much wider territory. Now they're shrinking and they'll have more people. And even if they bring more people, it'll be much easier for us to hit more. So whatever you do there, you kind of see what the end will be of this group. Today, some evil tongues also insisted that Ukrainians are attacking them in 3 directions in Kherson region. Here, I do not have any confirmations. I'm waiting for our military to make official statement about our renewed effort. If this is true, and if the reviewers are true, then there was not even an operative pause in Kherson. There was no tactical pause, everything continued as planned. So tomorrow we should have some good news. And the northern side of that group collapsed within about a day. And several key points, Great Alexandrovka, Davidov Brod, David's Crossing, the place that was fought for about a month. And it was a place where they fought back earlier. Now they're just collapsing and running. So these are good news. Okay, we have over 347,000, over 80,000 click the like button. And my usual ask, please share a link to that stream everywhere you feel comfortable doing so. This will definitely help to promote the information, which is much more interesting than those daily streams by Russian military done by Konashenkov, who is being poo-pooed on by even their pro-Putin's bloggers. And we've been aiming at that for a while. I'm glad to see that we are succeeding. Okay, we have also several good hits by artillery, including a hotel in Kherson where, with a swimming pool and a sauna and a degree of comfort, higher ranked FSB officers and military personnel were living. So at least 10 of them bodies of 10 of them were evacuated after, and right in the sauna, exactly. So yeah, we'll learn who they were, but that was a good success. We shelled more targets, Antonov Bridge, ammo dumps. So let our land not go dry or not go empty with successful hits on the Russian troops invading. They were also trying to hit us. They tried to hit the White Church, Bela Cerkev, with Iranian drones. Some of them were shot down. Out of 12, we shot down 6. 6 were successful, including, by the way, they were using them from territory of Belarus. We're not discussing what they hit, but yeah, it's known that they hit some targets. And they continue shelling Kharkov region, Chernigov, Sumy, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk areas. They're trying to reach us, we are shooting them down, try and provide some defense, if we're talking about what's going on in the air. All right. Everything we're discussing has meaning in light of ongoing mobilization. Russian top military, Shoigu, said they gathered 200,000. Oh no, he lied here. With mobilization, everything is way more interesting. According to our data, they managed to aggregate 92,000 people, with a little bit more, in their training centers, which is significantly lower than 200 that they claimed to have. And the writ they sent to Putin included the certain wording. They are facing significant difficulties in mobilization efforts. Some areas due to people refusing to serve, and most areas due to lack of supplies and weapons. So they are trying to restock whatever they have right now on the front with these 92,000. They will also add remaining vehicles from the 20th century that they're trying to get off from the warehouses and get started. And yeah, the rusty guns and stuff. But the document also included a very specific wording that an ability to gather battalion and even some sub-battalion level detachments in certain regions is causing serious concerns for them, that they are not capable to achieve these goals. And if they cannot gather even battalions, brigade, detachments, corps, they can announce mobilization of 17 more million. That'll be just internal agenda to just get these people somewhere in the training centers. And the main target would be to diminish the social base for the protest within the country, because they cannot process them in their education centers, they cannot arm them, they're lacking equipment. The picture I sent you, by the way, this is Lieutenant Colonel, he is 59. He was called from Novosibirsk, somewhere in Siberia. He is holding the absolute record on duration from conscription to his death. He has 4 days now. Before that it was 5 days, now it's 4. So on the 15th of September he was conscribed from Novosibirsk. He volunteered, right? Yeah, he volunteered. On the 16th he arrived to Liman, and on the 19th of September he was killed in war, perished on that day. And by the way, he was transported by airplane. 2 days, that's airplane, so it was obviously real fast. The officers spent 1 night near Liman and perished. This is how mobilization works. I want to also mention 3 things here while we're talking. There are some good people sending me messages, people in the know. Medicine, they have 0 field medicine. military medicine is beyond zero. All these tampons and pads to plug the wounds, this is not the worst of medicine that they have. Things in the field are much worse. The other factor is nothing to dress them in and nothing to feed them with. Those videos when they're showing people in the new uniform, that's maybe mostly 10% of the conscripts. So Great Russia, yeah, is reached to new levels of depth with Putin. First of all, speaking of uniform and equipment, that's all stolen. That's all has been stolen and sold. Yeah, Mark, they have no supplies. They were getting ready for the last how many years to the big continental warfare. They were going to win over everybody. With what? This is an amazing incongruence of military political goals and planning. Whatever you take. And you take any connections between planning and political goals everywhere, they're not ready, and they're catastrophically not ready. And not being ready is actually worse than crime and worse than mistake. This is just, they fucked it up. You cannot even describe that explain that with anything else but traditional Russian diseases. Maybe, hope so. And yeah, thievery. And I am afraid Russian army is going back to its natural state. 2 times it was lifted from there by Peter the Great and then Stalin, but most of other times it was rather pathetic. And looking at the catastrophic consequences of trying to make a new army from conscripts that should have allowed them additional time for action while winter comes, while Europe freezes over, that should have pushed Europe to the negotiation table. Even that plan completely failed, and it failed in record terms in about a couple of weeks after they announced it. So there was an attempt to create a political instrument to affect economy, to affect the life of Europe in winter. But even that plan is failing because mobilized will not survive till winter. And they, by the way, don't have winter clothes. You understand that, right? You told us earlier about the shoes that they're lacking. Apparently they don't even have underwear now. Yeah, look, the first instrument they used failed in 22 years. The second instrument they offered mobilized failed in a couple of weeks. What about the third instrument? Oh, the nukes? Yeah, I'm afraid they'll they'll fail in about a day. My reasoning is that Putin and his top, they know how to launch missiles, right? But they don't know what to do with that. What do you mean? Well, nuclear war, if you are doing anything like that, you need strategy, you need targets, you need to know what to do, besides just pushing the launch button. What else? Because if you do a limited nuclear warfare, this is a very fine art to not make it a global nuclear war and with destruction of civilization. If you do a super limited nuclear element of warfare with tactical nukes on the front, then you need a lot of troops that will actually roll through the breaches on the front, that will go capture cities. Even if we're all afraid and surrender, you do need to capture territory. With whom? With people 90% of whom don't have a proper uniform and they don't have food. Imagine they all will be thrown in winter into the field. There'll be that same, flu and COVID around, other complications because they are conscribing a lot of elderly people. So just on medical factors, they'll be losing 30-40% of their troops because of life in the field and, lack of everything. And now nobody is confident that they actually can use their even tactical nukes, because it hasn't been tested for dozens of years. And if their level of their personnel preparedness is similar to the rest of the army, chances are it'll explode in their own guns. So Russia is kind of floating down the funnel of catastrophes, and there's another good sign for that. Putin gave General Colonel to Kadyrov today. The biggest spit into face of Russian officers I cannot even imagine. He basically supported him in his accusations of the general command. He raised his level to the level of his vis-a-vis, whom he was attacking, General Lapin. And in the whole war history recently, I have not seen anything like that. If you go back to Stalin, he was playing that more masterfully. He was lowering and lifting, and at least there was something to lift people for, because with blood, with, not exactly brightest tactics, but they were still achieving goals. Here, they did not achieve anything. And here there's that Kadyrov story. And I'm really sincerely curious, how low are Russian military, Russian officers ready to go, having military intel, having the resources they currently have. For these spits, one would expect there'll be some blowback, but for now they're just just swallowing it and not doing anything. If Russian army has been trampled to that level, a few years ago, if somebody would have told me that that'll happen in a nightmare, I would not have believed that. And there is another angle to that. There is FSB, ex-KGB, for whom army is a competitor, who also hate Kadyrov. How will they react to that? I understand there is a lot of ripples going through the military circles in Russia. It would be interesting to see if the army and FSB join forces at some point. They never were together, but maybe to react to what's going on, they could. We'll see. It'll be interesting development if that happens. But right now, all the motivational systems, they used to exist for the army, they are dismantled. Because what the army is, it's an honor, right? They were completely dishonored. They were thrown into the fight with unclear goals. They were not given resources to even win that fight, and now they're being attacked left and right politically. If Russian generals were smart, they would probably do the same thing as they did during the Second World War. Marshals and generals were always bickering. Take any army, you can even take Israel army, that's a whole other source for a lot of movies and books, those inner fighting and battles lost due to that. But even during the times of Second World War, through the system of internal support, unspoken support between generals, they managed to resist Stalin to a certain degree. And that ended up in Stalin's death, and then Beria, whose right hand who was arresting them, getting arrested himself rather quickly after that. So they saved their lives, and they figured a way how to survive during those times, and they understood that they can hate each other, and they can try to fight each other and struggle each other internally, but as a class, they were resisting Stalin's push. And they figured a way to do that between 1937 and 1952. They had enough will and enough character to do that. Today, generals kind of matches Ukrainians saying that grandfathers were great, grandsons are awful. And right now they're not even reaching, in their current position, they're not reaching 1% of mythology they had around Russian army created. I expected there will be that catastrophe, that kind of catastrophe. I kind of knew that will happen, and we talked about that with you in our earlier streams. But knowing is one thing, feeling and understanding it really is another. And now I'm really getting impressed by that degree of that catastrophe, by Russian forums, by the shift of propagandists that are starting to attack army. And I would say it's being stimulated. It's not them by themselves. No, there's definitely been an official push to do that. Free for all, go attack army. Kadyrov statements that are supported by president, whose main goal you'd think would be to keep balance between everybody. The main art of politician would be to keep balance between different parties. If you weaken one, you weaken another. If you lift one, you uplift the other. They have to be equidistant from Kremlin. That's the political principle. But right now, there's a definite shift, not in favor of Russian military. Russian military spent their role. Their complete cadre corps is gone. They're all perished or wounded. They lost about 160,000 people total, excluding maybe strategic missile troops and maybe some of the Navy, but the rest, all the airborne troops, all the special forces, all the artillery, most of it, they're gone. They're dead trying to fulfill crazy orders of their political leadership. And now they're being spat on and trampled with boots of Kadyrov and the bloggers like. So with my mind, I could understand that earlier, but that's not going to happen at some point. But feeling that and kind of going through that, that's very grateful. And oh, that other story with mobilization. You see, they conscribed a person who was blind from birth in Moscow region. Yeah, that's typical. Yeah, I remember early on, when around May, when everybody was accusing us that we were lying, in fact, everything is much worse. I did say then that Russian army and Russian leadership will go into the moral catastrophe step at some point of this war. And when they'll be awake in the morning, they'll go through the same thing as Germans went through in 1945 in Germany, when they were shown all the concentration camps and deaths there. But the problem of modern Russians supporting Putin versus Germans in the Second World War are different. Modern Russians, you've seen those, pictures of teeth extracted for torture, people killed, kids killed with mothers and families. There is a certain percentage of Russian population that actually supports that. They're screaming that that's what Ukrainians should get. In Germany, those people were shocked when they saw the atrocities. These ones, they actually knew of things. It's internet. You cannot hide stuff. They knew and they've seen. They were conforming to that. But the catastrophe for them would be not in recognizing that that's what you've done. Their catastrophe would be indifferent, that they will understand that they're not nobody they thought they are. They initially thought they'll crush Ukraine in 3 days and Putin is a shining beacon on the mountain. And it turned out that they were just fucked here. And not many people can survive that, because Russian propaganda built a shining castle on the mountain, which toppled and buried, which is toppling and will bury them all under the rumble. And the economy is also going down. Specialists, if you notice, do talk about severe issues in their economic situation in Russia, and this will touch most families, because now we have mobilized on the field. There will be a lot more people perishing, because cadre at least knew how to survive. Mobilized, they don't, and there will be dead bodies or notes of dead coming back home to their families. Yeah, there are some videos from the front. Imagine people who don't know what to do under fire. They don't know where to hide. What will happen to them in very short term? And, okay, mobilized infantry, one thing, but mobilized artillery, mobilized anti-air. These are specialties one need to train for 2 years at least to be somewhat good. So that'll be the story. So we'll be destroying them here, and that's kind of pulling the curtain behind to see what's behind their effort. You'd wonder why Putin would not put Kadyrov and Prigozhin back in their place after those statements accusing the army. And the question is, how much falling into the grinder and spit in the face do people need to take? But frankly, it hasn't started for Mobilized yet, at scale yet. I'm only concerned that tens of thousands new dead will not become a reason enough for them to question Putin, because I think he may have pushed them to the brink where they are ready to fall and fall and fall and fall. I don't know if there is a limit for them to revolt. Not for Ukraine. They don't think like that, but just for themselves. Something like that. Because this is a catastrophe. This is a real catastrophe unfolding. I see these prisoners that we capture on Kherson direction. Many of them lost 10-15 kilos, about 20-30 pounds of weight. They haven't eaten for the last few days. They're morally and physically exhausted. They're looking into a point, some distant point, and not even talking much. I don't want anything. And these are prisoners from elite troops, airborne troops, Navy, Russian version of Navy SEALs. So that is a result of what? The destroyed logistics that we talked about, bridges and supply lines? Of course, yeah. Because we did talk about that. We talk about the disrupted logistics, and now we see captured soldiers weakened by lack of food, lack of supplies, and they're being taken by Ukraine forces pushing both on the front and on the top and the right side of Dnieper. Is there a difference? Those who are near the crossings, are they in any better shape? No, it doesn't work like that. At best, when all the pontoons manage to work during one day, because it's hard to capture them, even then they get maybe a third or a fourth of what they need for the group. This is a catastrophe, similar to what Paulo's army had, only worse, because they sent last battle-worthy 25-30 battalion tactical groups of airborne troops, mechanized infantry, special forces. We cut them off and they'll be basically eating the last dick in that group. They really, yeah, maybe in Kherson their command has something to eat, but again, it doesn't add to morale when your boss can have food and you can't. So they're being thrown some preserves at the bare minimum rate. They were sitting in that for a month. We cut off their supplies rather fast, and they had to also waste their ammo and their fuel. And then we weakened our attacks a little, but then we destroyed their warehouses and destroyed their logistics. So they were sitting there just, we were waiting for them to ripen. According to my data that we gathered from Kherson, they have at least 2,500 dead on the right bank of Kherson. Out of 25,000 that were there, every 10th is killed, and probably another 2 are wounded for that number. And the rest are demoralized. And this is the biggest active group of Russian forces. Some infantry, some mechanized infantry, and storm infantry remainings, remnants that we talked about. They now will be eating their last shoe over there, and it'll end really sad for them. They'll probably capture in a couple, or try to hold a couple ridges or fortified places there, but generally this is a strategic destruction for them. And you know what's important? You can see the prisoners of war, they behave differently. Some of them still have spunk, some of them still ready to resist. These are completely snuffed out. Their first statements, by the way, their command also kind of dropped them. Because some of the first statements we hear from them is, you know, we couldn't reach our command for 3 days already. They just don't pick up the phone. They don't pick the radio. They understand that they've been abandoned. And they understand their command doesn't give a damn if you die, if you don't die, if you capture, if you retreat. Command doesn't care. And when command doesn't care, the fighter understands that there's no reason for him to go on fighting. In the conditions they are, only the iron will of the command can hold them. Support somebody, promote somebody, kick somebody's ass, make sure you organize things. And what's going on? Instead, in Moscow, Kadyrov is getting general colonel, and the real general colonel who has spent his whole life and career in the army needs to survive being spat in the face and kicked in the butt. So what the F do you need to fight for? To be accused later? Now every soldier sitting there in the officer is thinking, either HIMARS is going to hit me, or Ukrainians on the ground will come and kill me. And even if it doesn't, then you still lose, because Putin already figured that army is not his favorite. Who will be fighting in such a moral condition? And Mobilized just haven't realized the rules of the game yet. They realize the rules of mobilization, but haven't figured out the rules of the fight. Imagine these mobilized people get to the battlefront hoping that, okay, there's cadre military who will train them a little. And as a result, when they see the cadre, they'll tell them, oh, hey, new fresh meat got here. Yeah, we thought we'll die alone. So the collapse we've been waiting can actually happen much faster. Looking at all these signs happening in some very short terms. Okay, we've been live for 35 minutes. 504,000 are watching us live. 160,000 click the like button. As usual, please do not forget to subscribe to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the privateer station if you are listening to or watching that in English. More links in the description. And please share links in your social media and with your friends. Yes, I'm not at home today. As I said, I've been traveling a bit, related to what will be happening in Russia, meeting different people. That's normal. I don't know where Olexiy is. Looks like not his usual interior, probably also on a trip, a business trip. So apologies for the quality of sound and maybe a different picture. This is our, nuance of our job. Yeah, we're all traveling, right? Here I have a warm hello sent to Russian officers and generals from our military colleagues, who, I would say colleagues, those colleagues who have to know their enemy better than themselves. So they're sending a message to generals and officers. If you do want to survive in that grinder, find opportunities, find ways to cross the front line onto Ukraine side. One condition, you need to bring something with you, something of value, information, whatever you think. You have a chance then, and a good chance, European citizenship, refugee program, because your motherland already denounced you. Do you want Putin to keep riding your neck, or together with Kadyrov, or you people who gave an oath to your country, who spent 25 years in different wars and different theaters, they wrote you off already. I would say your last chance is us. If you bring something of value with you, you get a second chance. All right. Let's also talk about sanctions. We've been live for 38 minutes. There have been some more sanctions implemented, and with the scope of the current situation and the concerns of the current situation and things unfolding, and also Putin's birthday, I understand, in a few days, who will enter another year of his life. What do you think about sanctions? My impression, and there's a bit of a sentiment, that there was not enough reaction to referendum on the sanction front. I think referendums do not really affect stuff because 3 months ago they were a surprise. They're not a surprise now that has been already included into the scope of sanctions and all. 3 months ago the perspectives were different. Russian army was expected to fight long and hard, and people in the West were not sure if we'll be able to continue fight the war, and if perhaps Russians will gather another effort. But now I think we're at a point where you can see that collapse is happening. The lack of Kherson offensive they were planning, the lack of Zaporozhye offensive they were planning, and now after they looked deeper into the mobilization and the way it's unfolding, only probably Elon Musk had some naive concepts about the possibilities of this war. And yeah, he's already playing it back. Yeah, only a person of that genius caliber can be that wrong about certain things. That Putin has some magic power, magic force to win wars. Now even very civilian people who were far removed from military and politics, if they are watching the news and the process unfolding, they already have no questions of where it goes to. And people stop being afraid. There is no reason to build new sanctions and speed and drop them on the heads of Russians. They're just, going through the planned destruction of Putin's regime. Lend-Lease works, legal sanctions, following the plan. They're doing what was planned, taking a lunch break and continuing doing that again. And I don't see too many people seriously afraid of nukes. We have a philosopher called Sergei Datsuk, a very smart guy. He introduced a new concept called the nuclear barrier. Right now, he says, countries and people can be divided into two groups, the one who crossed that barrier and the ones who didn't. In Ukraine, we all crossed that. What we are seeing here, we don't care. And if they use it, if they use tactical nuke, the way we are fighting now, we'll fight 10 times harder if that happens. That's just a fair warning. And I've seen in daycare and mothers' forums discussions about iodine and how much of it do you need to take to prevent radioactive damage to your body. So if they somehow manage to use it somewhere in the front, we'll only become angrier after that. We'll really wrangle them up much faster. There's maybe some sentiment on the West, although even on the American side, there are some good signs. Ex-CIA directors don't drop things for nothing. Who basically said, if you use that, we'll do this. And I think Putin is late to that party as well. That last means would have affected things if he probably scared everybody right after taking Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, when many weak souls were crumbling and teetering on believing in the might of Russian armor. He had a chance to somehow push that to the negotiation table. Not with us, but at least to maybe entice some of the Western pressure to try to push us to that. But today he's late. He's late even for that. This is not really working, and it will not work. This argument is losing force. It doesn't work as a threat, it doesn't work as a bluff. It might work as a use on the field. I don't think it will. They may have a different blowback. But again, with the use, they may be hoping that the actual use may give results, but they also understand that you cannot pull it back if it's used, and the consequences they were threatened with are too severe even for them. Okay, so I've been live for 43 minutes. We'll have more topics. We'll have a stream tomorrow. No, I'm missing tomorrow, but we'll do Friday. Okay. Friday and Saturday, we'll do that. Good. Then I think we need to create that pause for tomorrow. I think there'll be a lot of good things happening in the next 48 hours. and we can skip tomorrow, and then on Friday and Saturday we do have streams. Thursday we'll have other streams. Come over, we'll fill the usual space. We thank Olexiy Arestovych for being with us. Thank you so much, dear friend. And we ask all of you, almost 506,000 watching us live, please share links to that stream. Make sure those who need to see that, they do see that. And subscribe to Feigin Live, Olexiy Arestovych, and the Privateer Station. You know, one more paradox, Mark. I got an idea. Ukrainian high-rank officers are treating Russian high-rank officers much better than Putin is treating his officers. Because even with all the catastrophe and all the bloody fight happening between us, we're still holding the military honor and laws of war. We do respect career and rules of fight, rules of engagement. They see counterparts on the other side, and they're basically telling them, "Hey, it'll be better for you here. Come to our side." All right, we'll leave that for people to brood over for the next 48 hours, and then we'll get together and discuss it in more detail. Goodbye, everybody.